if you want to say any words before we start, or if I just launch straight into it.
Well, welcome to our next LC meeting, LC Talks. Yes, and we are warm-heartedly welcome Guy Eames, who will kindly share his vision about the green building. Am I correct?
Before we start, or if I just launch straight into it. Oh, that was strange. Like an echo.
Because I started broadcasting to the YouTube, but I muted it in YouTube, so everything is okay now. Fantastic. So you're welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I've met some of you in person. Marilyn, lovely to see you again, and it's great. Frank, you're with us, and I'm sure sometime Eric and Robert will get a chance to meet up either in Europe or in North America. I understand that the aim of these talks is basically to dive a little bit deeper into what each of us do, and have some sort of stimulating thoughts, and look at ways that we can work closer together. I think certainly by explaining what we do in a little bit more detail, the rest of the group will also feel where our place is within the group. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about, as the title says here, Tools for Change, Green Building Communities. So I'm going to say a few words about green building, but generally I'm going to talk about the green building movement and the experience we have had over the last 14 years in bringing together a community from scratch. So a couple of words about myself. That's my sort of day job, my business. I'm a sustainability consultant. I run a small company called Planet 2030, which I set up I think 3 years ago. And as it says here, we create solutions to environmental challenges by building international partnerships. I've lived in 6 different countries, and I've spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe, particularly in Russia, but also in Hungary and in Germany, in Czech Republic and a few other countries in the region. And as you can see from here, from some of the pictures, some of the projects which I've got up to over the last few years, some of which I've managed to weave into the activities of the Green Building Council as a way to really as a way to survive and to look for synergies. I'm originally from the UK, but I've spent more than half my life now living abroad, and those 6 countries include also the States and Germany and Switzerland and Russia and Hungary. I'm hoping I can remember them all, and the Czech Republic. So as you can see here, the idea is I love creating new things, new partnerships, bridges. So 12 or 13 years ago, I'm losing track of time already, I completed my second education in sustainable development and basically in green technologies. It was a master's in climate change and sustainable development in Montfort University in the UK, and it really set me off on this new life sort of mission. And the idea was to use my business development skills, which I previously used in telecoms, for something much better, for something to really help the world. And the only real sort of guidance I had was this wonderful book. I don't know if any of you have read it, Tribes, We Need You to Lead Us. And this is where I got my first ideas about bringing together communities of interest. Now, there are, I'm sure that you, probably even some of you are involved in leading communities. And these communities of interest, the main thing about them is that there are people who are quite often in completely different parts of the world, who are then brought together in this sort of community of interest in one particular interest. And the interest could be anything. It could be something they have in common. It could be, they could be single mothers. They could be people who are interested in paintings or whatever else. And I'm sure that the skills that are used to bring together these communities are pretty similar, regardless of what the interest is, of what the actual community is about. In my case, I completed my education, my second education. I decided that the best thing I could do, the most sort of rational and impact activity I could do would be to work in green building. Green building for many reasons. I think we all know that there are a lot of green technologies out there, a lot of green solutions, but the built environment affects us all, every one of us, unless you live in a little hut in the woods. And I pretty much live in a hut in the woods, actually, but because we all live and work and spend time in buildings. The average person spends about 70% of his time or her time in a built environment inside, rather than being outside. So this wonderful journey started in 2007 when I was invited to a meeting of an initiative group to set up this Green Building Council in Moscow. And at the time I was writing my final degree on energy efficiency in the corporate sector in Russia. And I just stumbled on this group, and they all looked at me and asked me if I would like to be the first, like the leader of this group. I was really astounded, but on the other hand, I was also, I felt it was destiny, and it's a very positive thing. So I'm going to, in as short a possible period of time, go through like the history of what we've been up to in these last few years, and touch upon a few topics which I think will be useful for us as a Living Cities Earth group, and hopefully to stimulate some sort of thoughts and some discussion with you. Obviously, a group, a community of interest is a group of people, lots of individuals who have their own lives and their own ideas and their own interests, and the idea is to bring them together, create a community. In 2007, 2008, there was no such thing as green buildings in Russia for many reasons. And the idea of a green building community was also very, very new. I think, I guess you all know pretty much what a green building is, or you can guess what a green building is. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail today, but a green building, as far as we define it, is a building which optimizes the use of resources. So any type of resources, whether they're energy or building materials or land or time or money. It's also a building which has a minimal environmental footprint, because every single building, unfortunately, has a negative environmental footprint. And thirdly, it's a building which is really ideal for people. It's a healthy building. That's the definition which we've brought together as a society here in well, Russia and the region over the last few years. But we're open to any definition. Green buildings include a lot of different very interesting solutions and technologies, and even ways of living. So next slide. So the idea of a critical mass. What is this? So you can imagine that if you have this society, this community, which just consists of a few enthusiasts, you're never going to change the construction. You're never going to change the built environment. You're not going to build hundreds or thousands of green buildings. And to make that happen, you need to create this, we're using a business term, this value chain, which includes the most important being investors and developers, because without this client at the top who's actually going to fork out the money and start the project, it's just going to be a discussion topic. So on the top, you have these investors and these developers, and then you need to have, surprisingly, an architect who also understands green design and green building principles. You need to have engineers who can put together all of the infrastructure for the building to make it really work. And then you need various other, what we would call solution providers. So you need manufacturers who have the materials, and other consultants, assessors, and people who can market the building in the end. I'm sure there are lots of others I've missed out here, but you can imagine you need to have this whole group of people to build or to create a green building. In 2007, 2008, we did not have this whole group together in Russia. So we brought in a few people from outside. In fact, our first investor was the property fund Heinz from the States, who were very much into green buildings. and they financed the first internationally verified green building in Moscow. It was a fantastic experience at the beginning. We had 30 people we brought together into a room. This is in 2007, and we explained the idea of setting up a green building council as a legal entity. And at the end of this, we very tentatively asked them to raise their hands if they're ready to become founding members and to be really involved in this new movement, I suppose you could also call it, in Russia. Similar green building councils have just been launched in other countries, the US Green Building Council being the largest one, but in the UK and I think 6 other countries at that time. And luckily enough, everybody in the room raised their hands and said, yes, we're ready to become founding members and to join you. And in fact, all of the people actually were ready to even to put some either resources, some money or some time into it, except for a couple of the not-for-profits. I think Greenpeace said that they could just become a member on paper, but they couldn't actually invest or anything like that. But this idea of a critical mass is very important for any type of community, especially communities which are based on some sort of business or I guess even some type of manufacturing where you need to have various, or even if you say you're painting, you need to have, you need to have the people providing all the materials and you need a gallery at the end to show the paintings. So our community is formed around this green idea, or sort of the idea of a sustainable building. So the next thing I'd like to look at is this idea of having an identity, because if you're creating a community, it's really good to have a cool name and some sort of identity. We were lucky in some ways that these green building councils already existed in other countries, so the concept was already there. And we were lucky that we also found a fantastic branding company who came up with this Green Building Council Russia. You can see the logo here at the top. This company, and we're still very grateful to them. With Clive Woodger is a Brit who is based in London, lots of international experience. They created around 80 brands in Russia for like the major corporations here, like big retail chains and many other companies. And they created this logo for us for free as a pro bono, which is absolutely fantastic. And I recommend anybody who's creating a community, maybe even ourselves with the Living City Earth, Cities Earth, we also even look at these sort of pro bono type of work, going to find someone who's a real expert in that field. We also use this image, as you can see on the top left, of everybody standing in the factory. We use that quite a lot. That was actually visiting a glass factory run by AGC Glass, which is one of the world's biggest glass manufacturers, and they produce lots of very energy efficient glass. And you can see here the identity, particularly of group pictures at cool events, of us being a community of people working together. And things like this membership certificate, it's in Russian on the top right, also cements this brand identity. We have a website and we have social media. We don't have maybe as many things as we could have for the identity, but over the last 10 years, people know who we are by the logo and by the brand generally, and pretty much what we do. So one thing which we decided very early on is we should look for existing really important partners who we could identify ourselves with and who could act as our partners on the local market. And the obvious two were the BRE from the UK. They created the BREEAM scheme, and the USGBC with the LEED program, certification program in the States. How many of you have heard of either LEED or BREEAM? Can you just raise your hands? Has everybody heard of LEED or BREEAM? Okay, that's cool. Eric and Robert, that's one new thing you'll learn today. If there's just one thing you come away with, that's really good. Well, the idea of a green building is it's a really complex approach. We're talking about a building which uses less energy and less environmentally damaging energy. So it could be either green energy from the sun or from heat pumps. In any case, it'll be using a lot less energy, but it's also at the same time, the building is going to be using materials which are more environmentally friendly, and it's going to have better types of lighting, which is good for people, and so many different aspects. We usually talk about 10 different aspects. And so to be able to say that your building, to rate it as being, you know, very green or a little bit green, there are these so-called rating tools. Yeah. And the oldest one in the world is this one called BREEAM, which stands for the Building Research Establishment's Environmental Assessment Method, which is a method. It has basically like 100 points. If you get like 98 points, it means your building is super green. And if you get 40 points, it means that your building is sort of okay, but it could be greener. So by aligning ourselves with this BRE from the UK, we've managed to use that as a framework. We've managed to take people to visit the BRE. You can see just the picture on the top right. That's their innovation park in London. Because until there were green buildings in Russia, we had nothing really to show people. So we could take them to like the home of green building, as it were, or one of the many homes. And we created this community also around BREEAM, because they have their own business model with assessors and with the whole sort of PR around it. And this nice little certificate you can see at the bottom. And the other building you see also at the bottom is from 2021. Won a prize as the world's greenest residential building, which is in the Russian far north, in a town almost in the Arctic, in Siberia, which we visited in a place called Tyumen, which is really cool town. So also, as I mentioned, the other key partner we had at the beginning was the US Green Building Council. I believe there are about 100,000 members, or there used to be. They organize a huge event every year called Green Build, which moves around to different cities in North America. They're not for profit. They work in every single state in the United States. And we managed through grants to visit the states. We took a Russian group over and we visited, I think, 6 different states and the different green building councils in those chapters in the states. We developed a particular friendship with the guys in Pittsburgh, the Green Building Alliance. They came back over to Russia. We went over there a couple of times, and we really achieved a lot by having this relationship. And you can see even the bottom in the middle picture, that's us visiting the Pittsburgh, I think it's called State University, where they have a Russian language department with lots of Russian paintings and things, and we even got together with some of the students there. And this community, obviously, we're creating a community in Russia, but bringing together the community in Russia together with the community in the States, in the UK, in other nearby countries, in Germany, in France, is a really fantastic thing. And it really, it's like similar people just coming together, and it's just a wonderful feeling, not just for business, but also for the type of relationships, both personal and the experience we can exchange. So we allied ourselves straight away with these 2 wonderful groups. So another few aspects that I'd like to talk about. It's as a community, especially as a not-for-profit, funding is difficult. And creating the type of programs which bring together lots of different new people who aren't necessarily related business-wise is also pretty challenging. So one way to do that is to look for research grants. And we were lucky, even we completed these projects you can see on the screen here, just before the Ukrainian war started, or the special military operation, as they call it here in Russia. We managed to get 2 grants from the UK, both for research, one for climate artists showing climate change using collecting data, which you can see on the bottom right through the sculpture, and the other one in research into green buildings with both a group from Russian University and from a London-based university, both with conferences. The conference that on the green buildings included 21 different speakers, and we finished that conference the day before all this terrible crisis started. You can see the flags there, the chap from the embassy. I think that's one of the last events they had before they shut down their sort of normal activities. So community events like at exhibitions with stands and with presentations. We've managed to piggyback off several really cool annual events. This one is called MosBuild. It's actually run by a UK-based company, and so we've partnered together with this huge exhibition company, MosBuild. Every year we have a community stand for many of our members, up to 20 or 30 members on the stand with all their green technologies and stuff, all talking to each other and showing the world what they do. And then we also have a conference involving some of the people from the stand and some other VIPs from all over the world, and some other local presenters. And at the end, we also have this dinner. You can see on the top right, this wonderful dinner. We often have also visits to green buildings. This is an annual event, which is so good for cementing together our community. It's worth its weight in gold, and everybody wins. It's a win-win-win situation. The organizers of MosBuild are happy to have us as their partners because we bring this so-called sort of content and a bit of cool speakers to the event. They believe in sustainability and green buildings, green cities, and so they give us the space for free, and we then use that as a magnet for all of our or some of our members. A wonderful event every year. It's like a little new world in itself. Other activities which bring together our council and this community are awards and competitions. The world out there is teeming with all these awards for green buildings and for new, innovative, healthy buildings. And so we take part in a lot of these competitions. We don't actually run any of them ourselves at this moment. Competitions take a lot more organization than you can imagine. There's a huge amount of work that goes into all the admin, as maybe some of you know. Maybe some of you have organized your own competitions and award schemes. But it's great to be involved, and it's great to do networking and use it as a way to bring in add value. The one on the left here with the two nice ladies, that's our Green Office Awards, which takes place every year, and on the right is one called 100 plus, which means like buildings of 100 meters or higher. So these huge buildings, or these sort of billion-dollar buildings, and we're part of that event every year in Ekaterinburg in the middle of Russia. Other activities which we found have been really good community building activities have been tours, or I don't know what the best way to call them, maybe group thematic visits, basically where a group gets together and goes somewhere. We have had, until the COVID times, we have had groups going to London to the EcoBuild. That's in the middle of March each year. It's one of the world's largest green building events. The other one I've already mentioned being Greenbuild in North America. And you can see here pictures of some of our members presenting, even like in 2010, 2012. Amazingly, even yesterday at an event, a guy came up to me and he said, "Do you remember, I went on your first tour to London in 2010. Do you remember me?" And unfortunately, I didn't remember him because just every day we meet so many people. But it's great when these people come up to you and they remember, and you've sort of changed their life. You brought them into this community by really making an effort. And these tours, sometimes they pay for themselves. Sometimes you can earn a little bit of money. Quite often, they just cover their costs, or you have someone even sleeping on your sofa or something, because there's just people you want to include. There's always like the occasional students or young people who you want to bring on the group tour, but they don't have the money. You can see here some of the things we get up to. We visit green buildings. We visit these natural new environments. Like the bottom right, that's an amazing reservoir, which is now a sort of nature reserve on the edge of London. The bearded chap there, that's Alex from the University of East London. That's the university in the UK, which is the most diverse university. with the most students, so the first generation students, and they're really inspiring to work together with them. There's this group you can see at the bottom in the middle. That was our last group that went just days before COVID hit in 2020. We do as many of these visits as possible. I've probably organized about maybe 20 various different types of visits, different countries, different places within Russia. People absolutely love them. Sometimes they're really grateful. They'll express their gratitude. Sometimes they won't, but they love them anyway. So another aspect, which is slightly different here, is like an expedition and engagement. Here, I mean, we take a small group, it could be just 2 or 3 of us, and we go off to some far-flung place where they've never heard of green building. So it's a little bit like a sort of like a missionary sort of work. We get involved in another group. So here you can see on the top left, this was, I think, 2019. We went to Dagestan. Now, Dagestan is part of the Russian Federation, but it's pretty much like a separate republic. It's a separate world. It's a Muslim country, and it's very mountainous. And they have a lot of people living in the mountains who live pretty much like they lived hundreds of years ago. And they don't have many green technologies, and there's certainly no real sort of green buildings in the modern idea of a green building. There are lots of green buildings that are made of stone and local materials and energy efficient, but they're from hundreds of years ago. So we were introduced to this group. I also attended another conference the year later on urban development in that wonderful republic, and we also went to Grozny. We're advised by the British and American embassies not to visit Grozny, the Chechen Republic. It's apparently a very dangerous place. There was a war there in the 90s. But in reality, I think you guys, Eric, you're from New York, right? I bet a lot of people recommend not going to places in New York. They probably say it's very dangerous and, anything could happen there. Don't go there. We were told, by the embassy not to go to Grozny because they have their own views on gender equality and on some other various human rights. We worked together with the university there. We were invited there several times, and it was fascinating to work with these students, to see how they rebuilt their city after the terrible war in the 90s, and to engage with them. And we found that they were amongst the cities we visited in Russia, the most loyal students who attend all of the events online and who do all of the training and are almost fanatic now about green buildings. So I definitely recommend, in whatever community we're organizing, we have an open mind and we go out of our way to go to new places, to meet new people who are not necessarily sort of mainstream in the area that we're specialized in. So this is actually my last slide. I'm going to hopefully we'll have a little discussion after this. I don't want to bore you with all my sort of, all the things I've been doing in my life. It's not some sort of ego trip, but the idea is to really interact. Obviously, at the moment, so we have these political, geopolitical troubles. Russia is pretty much at war with the West. I think that's a sort of that's reality. The world is changing. I don't know, will I be welcome in Russia in another 6-12 months' time? The UK is officially termed as an unfriendly country because of the sanctions. And although I've not experienced any sort of unfriendliness so far, who knows? I was at a meeting actually just before this today at the British Embassy, where we had an update, and we were told that only around 300 British people still left in Russia. So that's quite scary. There used to be thousands and thousands. And I was working here in the 90s and the 2000s. So I started to spread myself out. I've been visiting some nearby countries. In the top left, that's in Armenia, Armenia is a country very close to Russia. Is one of the previous Soviet republics. They have a lot in common with Russia, but they've gone their own way since 1991. Wonderful country, amazing people, and very creative and very interested in green building. And so we have a group there to set up a similar community, a green building community in Armenia. And I also have visited Azerbaijan, and which is, you can see at the bottom here with Fuad. He's our chap there. He's also a fanatic for green building. And Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and soon I'm off to Kyrgyzia, and some of these other countries around. And so the idea is, on the one hand, to spread this knowledge from Russia. We already have around 2,000 people, we think, as part of our community, who are experts, those who haven't already left, unfortunately, Russia. But even if they left Russia, they're still a sort of virtual community, and to grow this community into the nearby countries. So that's sort of win-win for those countries. It's also, in case things get intolerable here, then I think I could move to one of those countries. We're also working with the other BRICS countries who are not sanctioning Russia. That's Brazil, India, China, and South Africa. And in some ways, it's actually quite fun working with those countries because their economies and their development is similar to Russia. They're not being part of this sort of Western group, although I absolutely adore the European Union and Europe and UK, and I really regret the crazy Brexit that happened. And I love working with all these countries. Obviously, I feel I'm quite European, but as time goes by, I'm visiting more of these countries, and I think that we can delve out and bring together this green building community in those countries. We're also working with Turkey. We've worked with Turkey for several years, and they have a big community there with thousands of buildings. So that's pretty much that. Oh, that's all my pictures. Just a few sort of lessons learned. So very kind of quick few bullet points. First of all, when you're creating these communities, it's very hard to quantify success. It's not something you can easily do. I mean, you probably could do if you were aiming to measure it in money terms and you're collecting huge amounts of money and you say we're a billion-dollar business or something, but we're certainly not a billion-dollar business. In fact, we're not a business at all. We're a community, and we're not for profit, and we don't really measure. Money isn't that important for us. Although I know that within Living Cities Earth, we've got to collect some money together, and we all have to survive. But it's difficult to quantify success, but it's out there. And when people come up to you on the street and they say, "We know you're Guy Eames, and you're the head of the Green Building Council," and ministers even come up and say that to me, that's part of the sort of the success that we feel. Secondly, that community formation is a lesson in human relations. As you go along, you do lots of things which you think are so logical, so rational. You're helping people, and they see it in a different way. They think you're just trying to grab the limelight, or I don't know, you've got some sort of other hidden motive or whatever. And so it's very interesting to bring together these groups. I'm sure, Marilyn, I'm sure you've seen that many times over with in Finhorn and in your integral organization. I'm sure you've seen that as many times as well. This human relations and trying to understand other people. You become almost like a psychologist. Definitely my values changed during the job, during this last 12 years. People talk a lot about resources and thinking that they're money. We usually talk about resources as being human resources, space for events, amazing case studies of buildings, patents, excited people, energy, and money is just one of the many resources, but certainly not the biggest one. And we've seen many large state corporations with huge monetary resources achieve almost nothing, even with tens or hundreds of employees compared to what we're doing as a not-for-profit. It's a university of life. Everything we're doing is really interesting experience. I think I know a lot more about green building than a lot of people who work in the industry, because I've worked on projects, I've worked together with all these people, and it's just amazing. It's a really cool experience. Another thing is to always try and see the other person's view. You know, where are they coming from? What do they want out of this community? Maybe they just want friendship. Maybe they want a nice badge, you know, they want to have like a nice certificate. Maybe they want you to call out their name in the conference and say, this is the coolest person or the best company, or they've created the best building. And for them, that's worth $1 million, you know, just by saying that and by pointing someone out in the conference who's in the hall and saying, please stand up, give a round of applause for this person who's done such wonderful things for our industry. You need an ever-expanding skill set. You know, to be a community leader. We're now putting together a new website. We're about to launch it. I think there's something like 30 different pieces of software in that in that new site. It's just incredible. All the things you need somehow to understand. That's just amazing. And finally, being curious, but also respectful. For me, I've seen a lot of people around me who don't want to go that last mile, and they don't understand the reason why they should do that. They don't understand why they should go and visit a building or go and see one of our members in their offices or go and check out their project. But they really appreciate that, and it's showing respect, and it's showing curiosity as well, because once you go and visit all these places, like, I mean, we visit like winter gardens, and we visit community projects, and we visit new types of research facilities, and we visit all these new buildings. And every time we come away with something, and the owners of that project comes away also with something. So this is a very short presentation. I hope I haven't bored you. I hope there's some interesting moments in there. I hope the recording can be also useful, because these recordings we can then use to see what each of us are doing, and how we can bring together this wonderful community which we have in the Living Cities Earth. So over to you guys, if you have any questions, anything you'd like to ask, or any comments. Or yeah, I think you could just probably switch your microphone on, Robert, if you'd like to go first, and just just go for it. And I have to apologize if any of you think living in Russia is a sin. I live here. I love the country. My family are here, and we wish this war would finish soon. But I'm one of the 300 Brits still left here, and I hope that you don't hold that against me. In the same way that I wouldn't hold anything against you for living in wherever you happen to be living in. Robert, go ahead. You put your hand up. You wanted to maybe say something?
Yeah, I just put the hand up because I liked your talk, actually.
Oh, thank you.
It is very nice to listen to you, because I also have a very friendly relationship to Russia and to the Russian people. And to hear somebody who does not polarize is just wonderful. And I heard with a lot of interest about your elements to build communities. This is very interesting for me. I'm not so much skilled yet about the technical points about making a green building, but if you know a green building in Switzerland, please let me know. I would like to see it. Yeah, thanks.
Robert, I plan to come to Switzerland this year, and maybe we can visit some green buildings together.
Oh, wonderful.
In Switzerland, you would find buildings which are certified to DGNB or ÖGNI. There's the system, the Deutsche Gesellschaft für Nachhaltige Bauen, or ÖGNI, which is this Austrian system. But also there are other buildings which are not certified. But there are definitely lots of very interesting green buildings in Switzerland. I can't name any straight away, but I'm sure that there are, and it would be an absolute pleasure to visit one with you and to explore how we could work together. And it's great to hear that you're positive about Russia. I can see also Marina smiling there, and I think Lev also. He's not as grimacing quite as much as he normally is. Russians are amazing people, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. It's a fantastic country, and Ukrainians are also wonderful people, very similar to Russians, and almost the same group. It's like English and Scottish people. It's really unbelievable that we could ever, raise arms against each other. Liv, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Guy, would you please switch off your screen share so that we could look at each other? And thank you so much for your passion and for your being ambassador, both green building and Russia. It's very, very pleasant. Thank you so much. So, Lev, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. I just brought my daughter to school, and there were about 200 kids outside of the school. And I wanted to even make audio recording to share with you, because it was so alive. The energy of 200, it's an elementary school, so it's of 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 years. And their building is a green building standard. So I thought, wow, it's in line with what Guy is talking about today. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just to clarify, Russian people are good, but Russian government is definitely disgusting at this point. So it should be, I think, very clear for everyone in the world. unfortunately. So it's oppressing not only Ukraine, but Russia as well. Back to our topic. I have three questions. Number one, as we are taking care about our planet and communities and regions, how do you see we could manifest the green building topic in an optimal way in our LC activities? Should it be education or some other things? And who should be the partners on a global scale we should partner with to bring this topic forward in our activities with all the city leaders, etc.? That's the first question, and then I'll ask a few others. Thank you.
Look, it's great that you've not listed all of them straight away, because otherwise I might forget someone. So the first question, we should definitely look to work with the green building communities in the different countries. Now, there is this green building sort of movement, which in most countries, or a lot of countries, they have a green building council. We are obviously the Russian Green Building Council, but each green building council is different. Some of them are really well organized. Some of them have thousands of members. Some of them have a few hundred. Other ones have just half a dozen members. So it's not obvious, but we could definitely go in these countries to the green building councils. And in fact, in next week I'll be in London, and hopefully I'll be meeting with the green building, the World Green Building Council, and we could also discuss our cooperation in various countries. If we look on a city level, there are some really cool ways to work with a city. So many cities, and I worked this out when I went to the States, because I was trying to work out how they managed to have in the States, being 50 states with so many cities, how they have a green building movement across the whole country. And I really realized pretty quickly that each state has its own organization who are sort of connected with the other states, but not really connected half the time. And quite often it was like a grassroots movement. So for example, the Green Building Alliance in Pittsburgh, there is a very strong organization based there. They care very much about their city. They would be a wonderful partner to partner with in Pittsburgh, for example. And there are some really good instruments out there which are not necessarily connected with certification, because although certification is a cool thing, it's also quite expensive, and it's quite a sort of tick box sort of exercise, which has been taken over mostly by commercial entities who want to hang up these certificates in front of their buildings saying how green they are. And when you ask them what exactly is green about their building, half the time they don't know, which is quite sort of scary, really. It's like not greenwashing, but there's definitely a communication sort of gap. Let's put it that way. So there are other things out there. For example, I'm racking my brains now to remember what it's called. Well, first of all, in a lot of places in the world, there's a system called EDGE. Yeah, this is also a type of certification system, but it's actually a free certification system by the World Bank. So it's a sort of Anglo-Saxon sort of idea, but we know pretty well the lady who runs it, Michelle. And in a lot of countries around the world, if we're looking for a way to get into those cities with green buildings, EDGE is definitely a way to do it, because it's a very cheap but very effective tool. And with the World Bank, that will be another way in to work with the World Bank. And I know you just had a meeting about financing, so that could be a way in there as well. Also, the EBRD, they love EDGE as a system, because it's a sort of not-for-profit. It's not a sort of commercial thing. It's a tool for green buildings, but a very inexpensive tool. There are various other ways out there, ways to work with buildings, other tools. We can look at those in more depth when we get to that stage. There's absolutely amazing system from Australia called Neighbours, not written like as in normal neighbors, but written NABERS, and that's a fantastic system. And there are these new sort of third generation ways of certifying buildings. So that's the first parts that we should look to work with green building councils and green building movements within cities. And you had two more questions, you said.
Maybe I'll pass it on to other guys, and then I'll come later. So
apologies.
Switch turns.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I don't know whose it is, but iPhone FS. Yeah. Frank Suffer.
That's me. Hi. Thank you, Guy. As we're talking, I'm actually in the middle of getting calls from contractors right and left, and I'm doing a new construction project here. So I would love to get some of your contacts, and maybe it's interesting for the group as well. How do you contact contractors and architects that can build something green?
Well, we try and work, although I've got literally, I think on LinkedIn I have like 5,000 or 6,000 contacts. You know, it's almost got beyond a joke. We try obviously to work with the big hitters, you know, with like engineering and architecture companies who work in many cities with really cool projects, just because of the numbers. You know, we only live so many years and the world might finish soon, etc. So we try and sort of work with these sort of bigger companies. But I also know lots of really inspired individuals, and they tend to know people as well in their areas. So I've got a few really cool American contacts. If you're in Southern California, or whereabouts are you?
Right, exactly.
So I can look up some of my contacts in that area and put you in touch and see what you can do with them. The days of
Cool.
like, you know, getting lots of, I don't know, either free materials or creating sort of wonderful sort of case studies and whatever are pretty much over in the States, because every other building now is sort of green. But there's certainly lots of people there with passion who can help you and can recommend things and think up some out of the box sort of solutions for you, which is cool.
Yeah. No, it's interesting maybe for the group too. How do you find, because everybody here I'm getting is just ordinary contractors that just build the normal stuff and go to Home Depot or some building place and
If you look up on USGBC, yeah, so you look up, or you just look up on Google lead architects or lead specialists. That's LEED. So it's leadership in environmental. Leadership in energy and environmental design. And you put in your zip code. I'm sure that you'll come up with some people who are like either consultants or they're members of the US Green Building Council in your chapter in your area. There's also most probably a local chapter that you could get in touch with and see who they recommend. You know, they go
Cool.
and have some coffee with them. You know, especially in California, everybody likes, you know, meeting up and networking and stuff. Go and have coffee with them and say, look, I'm in this situation. I want to do this. You know, who would you recommend? I've spoken to so many contractors, they've not got a clue about, you know, the environment. They don't have this passion. Could you recommend someone who's really passionate? And I'm sure you'll find someone.
sounds good. Great. Thank you.
Good luck. Send us some photos. Yeah.
Yes, I will document the project.
So I see there are more points.
Hi, it's okay if I jump in? I just want to first say thank you very much for your presentation. It's not as much a question as a statement. One of the reasons I am really passionate about this organization is because I know it's going to challenge me in ways that I've never been challenged before. And, you know, what you do is completely new to me. And so I'm a real newbie in this area. And that's exciting for me. Because at 70, I'm 70 years old, feeling like a newbie is, I'm old, you know what I mean? So it's great to be new. And I guess where I'm kind of like, on the environmental field, I'm a newbie, and I've been entrenched more in the social kind of aspects of what we're doing. And I'm going to be really curious to see how we can collaborate together, from those spheres. So just once again, thank you very much, Guy.
Well, my pleasure, Eric, and you certainly don't look very, very old, and I'm sure you're very experienced, and we've lots and lots to teach us. I've actually 6 months ago became a grandfather. I've got my daughter gave birth, so even though I'm only 55, I'm a sort of young grandfather, but I also feel I've still got lots of energy in me, and hopefully we'll be able to use that together. It's very interesting also the social side the last year in Russia, there's been a lot of talk about this ESG, the environmental social governance. And so the environmentalists have suddenly got together with all these people doing social programs. And then it turns out, when you lecture Russians on that, they say, hang on a minute, we were doing all this in like the 1970s and 80s. This is part of our sort of our socialist country, which we used to live in, until you guys came along with all your, fast food and packaging and pollution and whatever else. We were doing all these things, we had all of our own like little free schools and trips and whatever else. So it's very interesting. It's interesting how it all comes around, and I'm sure Marilyn has also got her hand up. Has got lots to tell us on that one as well, with her vast experience in so many different fields. Marilyn?
Hi, Guy, and everyone else. Thank you very much, Guy. It was very informative. I also appreciated how you were building community, really, in every one of your slides. I have to speak on community in the 21st century tomorrow night for the Edinburgh International Sustainability and Peace Forum. So, but I'm curious whether Paul or anybody else has ever come across David Johnson, who was in Boulder, Colorado. And he was one of the very first integrally informed spiral dynamically green builders I ever met. And he was very adept at being able to speak to people where they were at. And he used green building to help people's worldviews to meet them where they were at, but also to change them and expand them. So if Frank is looking for somebody in California, David was all over the Western states, and I put his I have not spoken to him for many years. I put a phone and an email in there, so he would be somebody I would highly recommend. And since he was one of the first, if not the first, green presidents or chairs of the Green Building Council in the United States, he would know everybody worth knowing.
That sounds really cool. Yeah. Frank, maybe you could also look at some sort of barter even. One of the things we've done quite often is sort of bartering things. We said, okay, if you can give us this, we'll give you that. You can make a film about something, and who knows? Definitely. Boulder, Colorado, for some reason, has lots of really good green building people. Marilyn, you're absolutely right. I read so many different things.
It's probably because of David, because that was where it was his home city.
Yeah, I must be. These sort of things sort of.
Right.
We worked with Rob Watson, who's been to Russia a few times. He's based in New York. He was the guy who basically brought up Lev. He also has a Ukrainian wife and speaks a bit of Russian, and he was involved in Skolkovo, and he does amazing things. Rob Watson, we've been to visit him in New York, and we know a lot of the top people in USGBC, but they're moving on constantly. So, Lev, you've got your hand up again.
Yes, thank you. So I'll move to my other two questions. But first, I'll ask the third one. When we create, and we'll start creating this program this spring, sort of the Global Mayors Academy, which would be an educational and developmental program for people in roles of responsibility or community leaders who could be potential mayors as well, not only the actual mayors, but those who are interested in developing their city as a whole. In your perception, would we need a special session on green building, or would it be part of a larger topic like green and sustainable cities or circular economy in the cities or something else? How do you see this? And would you be able to curate this larger potentially topic in terms of organizing this session for our students from all over the world?
It's really good that you brought up this idea about training and skills, because that's actually one of the other cool tools to bring together communities, because people can learn together. They can feel they've taught each other things, they've picked up things. It's a bonding sort of experience, and they feel that if they have also the same certificate, the same level, that they're somehow sort of peers together. Depending on how exactly we do that, whether it's going to be an online course, or it's going to be a face-to-face in a group, or it's going to be how it's going to be, how deep it's going to be, definitely green building needs to go in there. Green building is so often overlooked when we talk about sustainability and sustainable cities. People talk a lot about the circular economy with the waste, obviously, and energy, but they often forget the buildings actually have such a, buildings use 40% of the energy, 40% of the water. They create 40%, it's this 40 sort of figure. The most 40% of the waste is from construction in most countries. So definitely buildings need to go in there. Let's, when we start to discuss with you how deep that course or how broad it's going to be, let's look at what we can do there. We've been putting together a course, actually this week we've been discussing how to do this, which will be a blended course. A couple of years ago, we did some really cool online courses, but we realized that people just in their own time, they usually give up. They do the first couple of parts and then they do the next bit and then they just phase out, you know, they just don't finish it. But if you have a blended course, then they feel they're part of a peer group. They have some sort of face-to-face activities. And that seems to be the sort of the best way to influence as many people as possible at the same time, sort of using the same material pretty much. So I'd be very interested in being involved in creating the concept for that.
Okay.
We've educated over 1,000 people in Russia on LEED, BREEAM courses and other general sustainability courses.
Understood. Thank you very much. And the last question, yesterday I was listening to an English-speaking presentation from the, it was called Urban Institute in Lviv, which is a city in Western Ukraine. And it was a joint presentation by, I think it's one of the largest architectural and urban development, urban planning firm. It's called Gensler, I think. You should know it, I guess. There are 7,000 architects and professionals working there. So they're right now organizing a forum on reviving and rebuilding Ukrainian cities after the war, which will finish at some point. And they have a forum in April. And I was thinking of contacting them. And it would be interesting to think about, well, because they will be rebuilding the whole cities with thousands of buildings which need to be replaced. So it would be interesting what can we bring in terms of expertise or other potential resources and information to this effort. So before I contact them, I guess we need to think about what role LC would like to play in the future revival efforts. It's not only about infrastructure, of course, it's more integral, but infrastructure for them, I think it's a priority because people need to live somewhere. And when we build something, it's better to build it according to newer standards rather than just, stone and metal. So if you have any thoughts, or Marilyn or anybody.
The first thoughts that I immediately have is that fortunately or unfortunately, the way that the world is organized at the moment, if you look at it from a pragmatic point of view, there are lots of wars going on around us and cities are being destroyed. And this is not just in Ukraine. There are probably like 20 wars going on around the world in Yemen and Eritrea and lots of other places that, we probably don't even know about. And once places are destroyed, they have a tendency to be rebuilt afterwards in many cases. And this whole idea of rebuilding the cities is really cool and it's an opportunity. So, for example, as I mentioned, Grozny was raised. There are only a few buildings left. It's like Stalingrad, and the students, they told us their experiences, how they went through 2 or 3 of these stop points where they check the documents to get to the university, and then about half the students were actually killed during the courses that they were doing in the 1990s. But they still continued, and when they finished, and the war finished, they rebuilt the city. And they used a lot of the rubble, a lot of the construction, what's left over from the buildings as in the foundation of new buildings and in the aggregates for road building and other things. There are a lot of skills which can be used. I've also been invited with a UK company to rebuild Karabakh, between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And although all these places, they seem quite scary, the same thing even for me, it seems quite scary going to Ukraine and rebuilding something, because someone with Russian connections, I'm sure there are a lot of emotions there in Ukraine, and people who have suffered personally and their families have and things, and they're looking for someone to blame. So even you and I, having some Russian links, we could, something unpleasant could happen to us if we go there. Who knows? But definitely we have to get rid of these problems. The other thing which I think about is you know, they have the conference in April, and obviously it'll be very interesting, but how practical is it until the war is actually finished? You know, what until the war's finished, how much can they really rebuild? I mean, you can be rebuilding all the time, and then it can be, you know, destroyed again. But that's the other sort of thought that I have. I was invited to Mariupol, for example. I didn't go there because I think it's dangerous, and it's it would probably be sort of too horrific to go there. But on the other hand, you know, these cities, they do need rebuilding, and someone has to do that work, and it would be great if they were green. So a very emotional topic. I can bring in lots of suggested lots of people that we work with in different countries. We work with, I know I was one of the co-founders of the Ukrainian Green Building Council, and I know about half a dozen people who are green builders from there. A couple of them I'm still in touch with. Some of the others don't talk to me anymore because, you know, because I have connections with Russia. So many of the green buildings built in Ukraine were destroyed already in the war in Donetsk and in other cities. But, yeah, it could be a topic. It could be a topic or two topics. One topic is green building for cities, and the other one could be green building for rebuilding cities with their own experts and technologies and solutions. There's a positive thing, you know, it's silver lining, you know, a new way to build a city. Any more questions? Any more points to discuss?
I love what Marilyn wrote, that before rebuilding, we need to also rethink and reconnect, right? We were discussing with Marina yesterday that within our LC co-founder circle, it would be very nice outside of our sort of task-oriented meetings to also have people-oriented meetings where we could talk about, Marina would better introduce it, but we thought to engage also Robert and Martin and other people who are sort of more people-focused than task-oriented. So we have a balance between what we do and what we are as a community and as a group. Marina and Marilyn, if you maybe share some of your.
What we do and what we live together. So it's really important, I think, to have such times when we can feel each other and reconnect heart to heart, not only through doing, but also through having the same vision and ideas. And this will help us to find new connections. We have just discussed with Marilyn before this meeting and with Kara our fundraising opportunities, and we have discussed also the importance of creating this common vision and common community, and the emergence of new possibilities and opportunities and projects, and they can emerge only if we can feel each other and understand what are our aspirations, our inner values, our maybe some peculiarities, and knowing better each other, we could find new solutions for co-creating new projects. So I think this could be also very useful and pleasant to be together.
And I would say, not to be facetious, but that we shouldn't have this dissonance in the world go to waste. Even a war can be used as a pivot point. And I think that if we were fundraising for something like rebuilding the community, Ukrainian cities, and took an initiative around that, knowing that we would have to choose the timing on it, but to assemble the resources to be ready to do that, and that would include inner resources as well. So some of the people here who are in Fintorn from the Ukraine are psychologists. They haven't stopped working. They've had to get someplace safe, but they're still working with people back in the Ukraine. And I feel really quite energized to think about that's a way of contributing to healing on a very large basis. And if we're trying to think about living cities Earth, I think it would be a project that would definitely call forth and stretch us to the extreme. but I'd be up for that.
Sounds good. And as I mentioned in my talk, this idea of getting together with the communities, not just virtually, but the real face-to-face meetings. We had a wonderful time with Lev and Alina and Marilyn last year. I think, and I know that you've had some meetings in California together. It'd be great if we can see each other a little bit more as well, maybe to create some sort of events like an annual conference. We did discuss that at the beginning. I didn't mention it in my talk, but most not-for-profits, they have like an annual conference, where everybody gets together, and it's a big event. And half the idea there is the networking and the sort of socializing and all the backroom talk. So that would be really cool. And Marina, we have to get you a visa so that we can get you out. Or if everybody else isn't going to come to Russia, then go somewhere else so we can all meet up. I
think Robert and Alina were preparing since last summer a meetup in Switzerland, and now we have LC Switzerland, or at least registered in Switzerland. So we'll definitely need to get everybody there one way or another. And if you remember, there was this guy, Lenin, the sort of the revolutionary 100 years ago. So he was going to Switzerland without any visas. So we can maybe repeat his experience. For those who would come without visas.
That'd be cool. Nice.
So this high note, I think that we could maybe summarize our beautiful meeting. Thank you all for joining, and thanks a lot, Guy, for your presentation, for your passion, for your generosity. That's really great. Thanks a lot.
Wonderful to be working with you all. Let's hope that we can each of us contribute something, and that the total will be much more than what we put in now. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.